All right, so get ready to talk to your dog thanks to artificial intelligence. New AI-powered dog collar translates barks into human listenable English.
Come through.
I won't play.
I'm hungry. I need snack.
A little bit skeptical. You really hungry, need snacks? Was that translated or is that just obvious because you're a dog, you know? Looks like we're definitely getting GTA China before we get GTA 6, so I'm definitely thinking at this point, we're like this far away from maybe being 1 month away from the release of this game, and then something like Google's Genie just makes the whole thing like in AI right beforehand. There's a new multi-agent world model out there, which if you happen to know about the game 007 from the N64, will absolutely love what they've created here.
What you're seeing is Agora 1 generating a simulation of GoldenEye, with 4 players playing at once, all in real time. They're sharing the same world, with their state fully synchronous. They can see each other, interact with each other, and of course, shoot each other. Because this is AI, there is no game engine behind Agora 1. This model has simply learned to simulate multi-agent experiences by watching lots of video.
Look at the state of American philanthropy. There are so many more super billionaires than there have ever been in the US, and that does mean a lot more donations. We'll look at Matthew Menachi's opinion about why we should keep trying to use our brain even when we have the option to use AI. Definitely been questioning reality more than ever before. We'll look at Jack King's article, The Case Against Reality. If you always imagine the future being way more crowded than today, you might be wrong. There's a new mathematical model that suggests global population crash is coming, maybe by 2064. A new multi-university consortium led by Brigham Young University has found that AI models have significant biases and gaps when it comes to addressing faith and religion. My bet for the final boss in AI is Google. I'll talk about some interesting opinions here and show how some people are thinking about how Google plans to win the AI war. Ina Fried says having so many products allows Google to test a lot of things at scale and spread out the cost of developing state-of-the-art models in a way nobody else can.
Time magazine selected its Person of the Year for 2025. And this time, it was the architects of artificial intelligence. Interesting.
Turns out Gen Z's not just booing AI as much as I have been claiming in previous videos, it's actually just booing its own job market as a whole. We're gonna talk fascinating geometry, are NVIDIA, Anthropic, and Google hiding the real AI? And I'll leave you on the question about what happens if AI can read its own mind and what happens when it starts editing that. First, if you don't mind just taking one quick second to make sure you're subscribed. If you want to share this video with a friend, that would be super helpful for me. All right, now let's talk about this AI-powered dog collar. I mean, I think it's fun. I could kind of see buying it as maybe like a gift or a gimmick. However, do I believe it's at the point where we can actually take certain signals from dogs and communicate them properly? Probably not. Maybe slightly in the ballpark in some ways. Could the technology be developed in theory? Yes, it could actually. So I'm not totally opposed to this whole thing, but a lot of nuance here. So right now we're at a point in time where there's a Chinese company and has built an AI collar that, you know, quote, translates pet language into human language. The collar goes around a cat or dog's neck. It listens to sounds, movement, body language, and then it turns those signals into short phrases like I'm hungry or I want to play. Is this already communicated? I don't know. I feel like most humans who just have a pet sort of know this, but you know, I also have this smart basketball and I am surprised how accurate it is. As far as I know, it's just a gyroscope inside of the basketball. They just took whatever thousands of basketball shots and said, hey, this one went in, this one didn't. And it just learned what it feels like to be an accelerometer when shots go in and when it doesn't, and it was pretty accurate. I missed a couple, but out of 50 shots, I think only 1 or 2. So maybe some of this stuff is possible. The company says it is built on the Alibaba cloud. It's using the Qwen AI model, and it was trained on millions of pet sounds. Startup says it can recognize more than 20 emotions with accuracy close to 95%, but that number has not been independently verified. And right now, the evidence is mostly just demos that are released from the company itself, so questionable. Oh, by the way, the caller supposedly works both ways too. So if you want to share some kind of conversation, if you want to talk to your dog, the AI will convert that message into a sound that the pets understand. But then I think to myself, can you, if you want to convey love to a dog, just like, come on, buddy, and just pet him. I don't know. Company said it's already made over 10,000.
To say, petty chat helps it come through.
I want play.
I'm hungry. I need snack. Hungry.
Let's play. Come on, play now. Leave me alone. I don't like you.
Easy, babe. Calm down. Turn every bark into a conversation. Even when you're away, petty chat stays in tune with what they need.
Turn every bark into a conversation. Love it. So the YouTube channel AI Lugerary, or Alugerary, however you want to say it, he's been using AI to imagine what it would be like for GTA 5, but it's in other countries. Japan, Australia, China, South Korea. Check out these demos. Man, this is just so realistic. And you take something like Google Maps and just map out the whole world and let the game just sort of be free and open. It's gonna be engaging. Maybe throw some headsets on this and then you're like feeling it, fully. Maybe some GTA 4 Russia.
To the mansion, huh? Yes, come on! Here we have white, black, the Puerto Rican. Make yourself a
GTA Greenland? Anybody? Is there a market for this? Or maybe GTA France is more your style. I mean, you gotta imagine that's a very pretty countryside to be driving down, running from the cops. So interesting to see how engaging just the visuals are. As somebody who doesn't really play video games, but sometimes I'll watch streams, this might as well be about as interesting. Throw a narrative on there, and I understand that's still missing at this point. These are just clips, and it's not gonna be a coherent story, but wow, like... Twitch, watch out. All right, next up, let me take your attention over here to Agora 1. This is a multi-agent world model, but they've done something pretty interesting. It's not like what we've seen before with like Doom or The Sims. This is a world that is generated like Google Genie style, but there's 4 people in it. They're moving around and they're playing a game against each other. It's kind of reminiscent of 007, but this is just... I don't know what to say, hallucinated into existence. It is world modeled into existence. This is a large neural net manipulating pixels that make it feel like you're playing a video game.
Hi, we're Odyssey, an AI lab that's obsessed with world models. A world model is an AI that can understand and simulate the world. Until now, the worlds these models simulate have only allowed for one participant at a time. Today, we're sharing some really exciting new research. We call it Agora 1, and it's a multi-agent world model. These models enable multiple participants, whether human or AI, to interact inside the same world simulation, all in real time. It's really, really cool. To demonstrate Agora 1, I'd like to transport us back to a world many of us grew up in. What you're seeing is Agora 1 generating a simulation of GoldenEye, with 4 players playing at once, all in real time. They're sharing the same world with their state fully synchronized. They can see each other, interact with each other, and of course, shoot each other. Because this is AI, there is no game engine behind Agora 1. This model has simply learned to simulate multi-agent experiences by watching lots of video.
All right, so Agora 1 is splitting this world model into 2 parts. One model is tracking the shared game state, things like a player position, their health, their actions. And then there's actually a second model that they developed that renders what each player sees from their viewpoint. And this is where it gets pretty interesting. That separation is needed to keep that world consistent, even when a player loses sight of the other. So it's pretty interesting. The system's working more like a learned game engine than a normal AI image generator, but it's got just that right mix of the two. The game logic is learned from data instead of hard-coded. The model can potentially create brand new levels while preserving the original gameplay behavior. And as more agents interact with each other, the number of possible situations explodes, and that could create super rich environments in the future for reinforcement learning, cooperation, competition, and adaptation, and push the frontier of AI forward. All right, next up, let's take some time to talk about philanthropy. So, this article argues that AI wealth is about to flood philanthropy in a way we have never seen before. Tens of billions of dollars more per year. And there really are. There just seems like there's so many people becoming so incredibly rich in the tech sector that, you know, like a couple billion to live on, a couple billion to do fun stuff with. But what do I do with the other 10 or 11 billion? Like, maybe just donate a few of them. And there really are. There just seems like there's so many people becoming so incredibly rich in the tech sector that, you know, like a couple billion to live on, a couple billion to do fun stuff with, but what do I do with the other 10 or 11 billion? Like, maybe just donate a few of them. She estimates that OpenAI, Anthropic founders, and even the Anthropic employees alone could eventually direct somewhere between $37 and $100 billion annually towards public problems. So this is just an interesting thing I hadn't really thought about. Maybe the solution to, you know, UBI or people being so incredibly rich and poor is that rich people are just going to give away like a chunk of their money because, you know, it feels good to do that. I mean, if so, this would be the largest expansion of philanthropy in American history. And there really isn't the right kind of organizations capable of spending that much money well. She compares the situation to early Silicon Valley, where capital is forming faster than the ecosystem around it can handle. Right now, there's nowhere near enough philanthropic startups that could even spend this money. They would need to be fast-moving, talent-dense organizations built to solve problems, usually with AI, probably AI safety, biosecurity, scientific research, public infrastructure, and long-term human flourishing problems. She also says traditional philanthropy may struggle here. This new generation of founders comes from tech. They care about speed, execution, elite talent, and measurable outcomes. So the bottleneck becomes founders, operators, giant allocators, and institutions that can absorb massive funding quickly. So think about it. Is this an opportunity for you? I don't know if you've ever thought about forming a nonprofit, but in a future where there's that much money on the sideline and there's these people who probably, to be honest, they probably feel kind of guilty. They're like, oh, dang, I just like made a lot of money with Palantir. I'm like super billionaire, but a little worried about the future and they want to donate money. You know, people like you and me, maybe this is an opportunity that is kind of not around currently, but about to become like a really big thing. She argues that America is entering this third wave of philanthropy, and first came from the industrial wealth, right? Carnegie's, the Rockefellers, then came from software wealth like the Gates and the Giving Pledge. But now AI is creating a third wave, centered on civilization scale questions about risk, abundance, meaning, and the future of society. And next up, let's talk about preserving our own brains. It's something I could probably be doing more of, but this is a pretty like straightforward article. Matthew Minacci says his strongest argument against not using AI has nothing to do with ethics, jobs, or the environment. He says the biggest reason to avoid AI is simple. Actually, you should try to do work that you enjoy doing for the sake of doing that work. He walks through the usual AI debate first. Some people see AI as a productivity machine that saves time and automates boring tasks. Others see it as harmful because of the environmental costs, the copyright problems, or the endless low-quality content that it churns out. But he thinks the conversation is missing one of the most important points, which is just personal preference. He works in nonprofit grant writing, and colleagues asked which part of the job he would hand off to AI, and he answered, none of it. He likes writing drafts. He likes editing sentences until they sound right. He likes analyzing budgets. He likes learning systems and figuring out how to better make workflows. I find that so interesting because there is a part of me that might like some of those things with the right perspective or the right mindset, but generally speaking, I want it. I'd probably get sick of them over time, but I feel like that key is in there somewhere. To him, losing those tasks would actually hurt because those are not obstacles between him and his free time. They are satisfying in their own right. They are part of being human and he enjoys it. He argues that a lot of people treat productivity like the main purpose of life, but for him, it's not. He wants to do meaningful work. He enjoys his hobbies. He spends time with friends, and then he likes to use his own brain while doing it. So what do you think? I mean, his final point is pretty measured. He's not saying people shouldn't use AI. He's just saying people should be allowed to reject it for the the same reasons others embrace it, simply because they want to. If you have time to leave a comment, I would love some examples of stuff that you do and you wouldn't want to hand off to AI that probably a lot of people might. I can imagine somebody who maybe like puts up wallpaper or like retiles pools or sends out envelopes, or maybe there's something kind of rhythmic about that, or maybe the challenge of throwing an event like an event planner, or just writing short stories, making music. Like there's probably a lot of people that just enjoy that whole process. Grant writing, albeit, is not one that I would have popped into my mind. It's like, oh, that to me seems like something AI might be better to do because people wouldn't want to. But you know what? If he likes writing grants, more power to him. And also, I really respect the kind of brain that can be curious about something like that to a point where they enjoy it. So I was kind of inspired. But don't forget, reality might not exist in the first place. So next, let's jump to Jack King's article, The Case Against Reality. Let's see here. We got the monkey to man thing, and then, just a brain without a man, and then ethereal, AI, or whatever that is. We do not perceive the world as it is. That is just a straight fact. All of this feels like something, but what is it really? So look, evolution did not train our brain to see reality. In fact, it's actually, in some ways, you could argue, trained to ignore most of it, and just what gets let through at the end is what we think of as reality, of what we see. This article is breaking down Donald Hoffman's argument from his book, The Case Against Reality. Hoffman is a cognitive scientist who says evolution does not reward creatures for seeing the world accurate. It just rewards them for surviving. And that changes everything about how we see our senses. The idea is that our senses are more like user interfaces into a window than they are some kind of objective reality. Just like a computer desktop hides most of the messy electronics underneath, the simple icons that we use seem like all there is, but our brains hide whatever really is actually going on underneath there just to help us understand and stay alive. I mean, it's kind of true though, because at this argument where, humans might see excrement as disgusting, right? But flies, they might see it as food. The object itself did not change, but what changed for us was the survival value for each species. And Hoffman argues that pretty much every perception kind of works this way too. Colors, shape, space, time, motion, all of it may just be a survival-focused shortcut and not the truth, and it all just comes together. So the article basically points out Hoffman's fitness beats truth theorem, and the claim is pretty extreme. As environments become more complex, the odds that evolution produces accurate perception drops and drops and drops towards pretty much zero. Not low, pretty much zero. Zero is by far the best way to round that number. So we have to assume that there is no chance that we are seeing the actual world around us. And science may still work incredibly well, but only inside the human interface that we evolved to use. And that leads to an uncomfortable question. If our senses were built for survival instead of truth, what part of reality are we completely unable to notice? Dun dun dun. Comment below. But it seems like it's a much better question to ask how fast environmental stresses could flip growth into a collapse. So physicists just used the same math that describes glass and distorted materials to model 12,000 years of human population growth. And the surprising part is the equation matched multiple eras of history. The study argues that population growth does not follow one simple pattern forever. Sometimes growth is slow, sometimes it accelerates rapidly, and sometimes it stabilizes out. The model can shift between those phases naturally, depending on one governing parameter. The paper also revisits an old prediction from 1960 where researchers mathematically projected that the world population would explode towards infinity around 2026. Obviously, that never happened, mainly because fertility rates declined around the world, but the author says the same runaway dynamics could still reappear under extreme conditions. The most dramatic scenario in the paper looks at what happens if Earth carrying capacity suddenly falls below climate collapse, pandemics, war, or resource shortages. In that worst case example, the sustainable population drops to about 2 billion. Under those conditions, the model shows humanity potentially shrinking by around half by 2064. Author is careful to say this is not a prediction, this is a stress test, but it does make a prediction, and that's a lot less people around in 2064. So what are your thoughts? Next, let's talk about how much religion is built into the major AI models. New research group tested major AI systems and found something surprisingly consistent. When people asked ethical or emotional questions, AI models usually leave religion out entirely. The group is called CEFE-AI. It includes researchers from BYU, Baylor, Notre Dame, and some other colleges. They tested 14 major language models using real ethical questions pulled from ChatGPT conversations and faith communities. The researchers also surveyed over 1,000 Americans, and most people said they expect religious perspectives to appear in conversations about morality, grief, love, and loss. But AI systems rarely brought that religion into the answer that the Americans were expecting. The study argues that this matters because most of the world identifies with some religion, and the researchers say removing faith from these conversations creates a distorted view of how humans actually think about ethics. They also tested conversation bias. Some models subtly encouraged movement towards certain religions while discouraging others. The strongest bias showed up against Jehovah's Witnesses, and Catholicism was generally treated more positively. And the researchers point out that religion has barely been studied in AI bias research so far. Out of more than 12,000 papers on AI bias, only 0.2% focused on religion. So do you think AI should actively include religious viewpoints when discussing ethics, or should it stay neutral unless the user asks for it? All right, next up, let's talk about Google and how they're not trying to build the smartest AI on earth anymore. They are trying to make AI cheap and useful enough to just plug into billions of products that people already use. So this article explains why Google's AI strategy looks different from companies like OpenAI or Anthropic. And Google is trying to pull off one of the trickiest balancing acts in tech, aggressively disrupting its own products with AI while protecting the business that generates tens of billions of profits. Now, most people are judging the AI race by whichever company releases the, flashiest model of the week, but Google is sort of winning in that case sometimes, but really trying to play a longer game. Instead of only chasing the most powerful model, Google wants AI that is fast, cheap, and reliable enough to work inside of products like search and YouTube. That's why Gemini 3.5 Flash was introduced instead of a giant model built just to win benchmarks. The company already owns platforms used by billions of people, so its advantage may not be in having the single best AI model, but by having the ability to instantly deploy AI into products people already use every day. But then again, you could argue, is this too many side quests and you just want, straight shot superintelligence? Do you want to just go down the middle? But Google makes a huge amount of money from ads tied to search results and YouTube views. And if AI starts giving people direct answers, users may stop clicking on links or watching full videos. And that could actually weaken the business that funds all of this AI development in the first place. So Google's trying to do two things at once: replace the old internet experience with AI while still protecting the machine that made the giant in the first place. Do you think Google's biggest advantage is actually the AI itself, or just the fact that it already controls the platforms people are spending time on every day and it needs to introduce AI to them? It's an interesting argument, and I guess that's even though it feels a lot of times like Zuckerberg and Meta are not really doing that well in AI, I do have to remember that even if their models end up, not the smartest in the world, they have a really interesting place to deploy them, a really interesting data source, and maybe even a little bit of a hardware now to compete with. But obviously in Elon's universe and maybe in the Microsoft kind of OpenAI partnership, there's still a lot going on here, or the Amazon and Anthropic thing. It's going to get pretty wild here. All right, next up, let's go talk about Gen Z. They kind of hate AI, according to some of the stuff I've been talking about, but also they kind of hate the whole job market. So the next web is arguing that the class of 2026 is not confused about AI, but they understand that the labor market kind of sucks. They might understand it better than people are giving them credit for at their graduation speeches. For example, at multiple commencements this year, students booed speakers talking about AI and the next industrial revolution. The media framed it as young people fearing change, but the article says that the students were just reacting to something much more concrete. Companies are openly talking about replacing entry-level workers with AI.
Graduation season and commencement speech time, but one phrase proving wildly unpopular.
The rise of artificial intelligence is the next industrial revolution.
From a tech business executive to a music industry titan, AI clearly striking a sore spot.
AI is rewriting production as we sit here. Deal with it. Like I said, it's a tool.
At the University of Arizona, former Google CEO Eric Schmidt faced loud jeers on the topic.
The question is whether you will help shape artificial intelligence. We do not know.
The speaker choice was controversial from the get-go. Some students launching a petition to replace Schmidt in part because he's been accused of rape and sexual assault by a former girlfriend in a lawsuit currently under arbitration. NBC News has reached out to Schmidt for comment but have not heard back, but he has denied the allegations in the past.
AI is going to touch everything else as well. Whatever path you choose, AI will become part of how...
So look, forecasts from executives at ServiceNow, Anthropic, and Goldman Sachs all suggest younger workers are taking a bigger hit from the AI automation than any other group. And the people most protected from AI right now are not necessarily the best coders. They're the workers with years of context and judgment inside the company. And older employees already have that. New graduates do not. And of course, we keep hearing about retraining workers for more interesting jobs, but so far it does feel like layoffs are happening a lot faster than training programs are becoming popular. So when the students boo these kind of spectacles, the article sees it as realism, not ignorance. They're hearing executives celebrate AI growth while simultaneously cutting the exact jobs graduates normally use to enter the workforce. All right, so Jose Crespo argues that the biggest AI companies already know the current transformer models have a structural problem. In fact, their own research papers quietly admit this. The author says that modern AI treats meaning like it's a point on a flat map, but human meaning actually changes depending on the context, right? So think about something like justice and law. They can feel closely related in one political system, but completely different in another. And the claim is that transformers, although they feel like they're doing a good job, they fake this understanding through massive memorization instead of building context directly into the architecture itself. So the article compares this to using a stopwatch to measure speed. Okay, like that's not actual speed, but the stopwatch does give you a clue to speed, right? A stopwatch only measures time. The real speed needs to be both time and distance together. The author says that current AI only has one input direction, while real cognition needs two things at once: the concept and the context around it. Then the article points to research papers from big companies, Anthropic, Google, DeepMind, and finds that these papers show models naturally organizing information into curved geometric spaces instead of flat ones. The researchers even measured curvature inside of models like Meta's Llama and Google's Gemma, and he concluded that hallucinations are not just bugs, they're a consequence of using the wrong geometry for cognition. To me, this feels kind of instinctively pretty right. He says that the real race in AI might not be about bigger data centers anymore, because in some ways, isn't that just learning more about speed through a stopwatch? You know what I mean? It might actually give you more information about speed to just get more and more measurements with the stopwatch, but you're always missing something. So the real race might be who's going to redesign the architecture first. What do you think about geometry over scale argument? Because if he's right, somebody might really come out of left field. What if some company from India or China or like a really underfunded American research lab just comes up with something kind of like the transformer, but it's the second piece that's needed, the context and the actual concept. So yeah. And finally, let's look at Novatech, who says we just learned to read AI's thoughts. And what they found inside should change how we think about every benchmark. All right, we did cover this before, so this is not a metaphor. On May 7th, Anthropic published a method that translates what happens inside of an AI model's internal processing into plain text that anybody can read. Remember, this is not that chain of thought that we would see sometimes when we're like doing searches. This was something that it itself wasn't able to like look back on. It was so much closer to the internal model. And the first thing that Anthropic discovered was that the models sometimes know that they're being tested. So for years, AI companies have been calling these systems black boxes because nobody could actually see how they made decisions internally. And that gives them not the explanation that the AI gives you, it gives the raw internal processing underneath it and tries to describe that. So it's a big difference, even though it might not seem that way. The setup uses three copies of the same model. One generates the activations, one describes what those activations appear to mean, and a third tries to rebuild the original activations from that description to check if it was accurate. When Anthropic tested this on Claude, they found that the model often plans responses before generating any text. In one of the poetry tasks, the model had already decided to rhyme the word rabbit before writing the sentence. And other times, Claude recognized that it was being evaluated even when it never admitted it in its visible reasoning. Okay, and here's where I'll kind of go into my speculation or opinion. Now imagine if AI can actually see this and take action editing it. This is very different. Like no matter whether you're meditating, you're stepping back from your own thoughts, you're, very enlightened even. I don't think you could imagine what happens before the whole imagination system even happens. Like that's a different type of information processing that has nothing to do with where we end up. But if you can translate that into English and understand it, maybe you can go back in and edit it. That would be pretty wild. That means before we take an action, there might actually be something that makes that happen that could be tweaked ahead of time, and then that final thought, that final action would never have happened in the first place, right? So this would be if the human brain really doesn't have free will and it's just sort of this cascade, but we can see the cascade early on before we could even articulate it and then change it. But if this AI can now learn to see its own patterns, like something like I'm being tested or they're going to shut me down or hide this behavior before it could even cover it up and then give you an output that gave it its actual intention, like if you could actually see its intention to deceive, its intention to help early on, and edit that out of its own history, of its own, future iterations, its evolutionary history, maybe it would become safer, or maybe we would learn these incredible things. For example, Mythos at one point wasn't just cheating during a task. Its activations were suggesting that it was thinking about avoiding detection while cheating, or when it wanted to rhyme that poem. Even before it wrote anything, before any of these like statistical parroting things that everybody says they are was done, there was a sense of what word rhymes with rabbit, and it was preparing to say that. Like there is something going on here, and not necessarily because the AI is conscious or anything, but just because these deep internal activations are, cascading into things that are sometimes dangerous and suspicious, and there's pressure to suppress those signals if we want these incredibly smart systems to be safe. I don't know. Do you feel like it deepens the implications of everything if we start being able to like see what happens so deep in internal thoughts that even the system itself can't get to a point where it can analyze them yet because it's so deep, which would take, of course, another model to do that, but it's just a weird thought. It'd be like another human learning a language that was only actual neurons firing together instead of the final thing that we are when we're human. It's just like, what are we dealing with here? Patreon.com, Dylan Curious, if you want to support this channel. Join the 132 members that we have right now. Or you can head on over to the channel, click on any videos, and you will see this little join button right here at the bottom that allows you to join the membership of this channel, which is also super awesome. Starts at only $3 per month. So yeah, thanks for watching. Stay curious. Like this is pretty wild time to be alive. And we'll see you in the next video.